Good afternoon, everyone. I take this opportunity to welcome you all today to our webinar, Leveraging Your Personality to Solve of COVID-19. There are close to 7,85,807 COVID-19 cases across the world now, and organizations worldwide have started adopting the work from and people have started social distancing. If an employee decides to work from home for a few days, or even chooses to do that for a while, then that is generally their decision. Suddenly being asked to work from home, having all the other choices being taken away is entirely different. Remote working is extremely stressful for some personality types. And now that work from home has become the new normal, where social contacts have been curtailed, and it is very unclear as to how long this will last, there's no surprise that some are finding it difficult to cope. The types of behaviors we demonstrate, the way we react to this crisis, are likely to relate to our personality. With that being said, and to find out more, please stay tuned till the end of this webinar. I welcome our speakers, Uravi Raichandani and Shruti Nayak. Uravi is a psychologist with more than 20 years of work experience within multiple setups like industries, NGOs, schools, and hospitals. She is a Gallup certified strength coach, been an executive coach for senior management and entrepreneurs. Shruti heads our assessment practice at Naman and is also a Gallup certified strength coach. Has been with Naman for the last 10 years and she has worked across various OD assessments and L&D projects. Over to Shruti.
Thank you, Sulagna, for the wonderful introduction, and thank you, Urvi, as we both will be co-facilitating. Yeah, as we both will be co-facilitating this session, and as I think Sulagna rightly mentioned that for next about 30 to 45 minutes, what we will be really talking about is how do we leverage our personality to serve through the times of COVID-19. Uh, if we now look at the screen, Sulagna will share the screen in a short while. What we see that each one of us are today, our life or a day in a life actually under COVID-19 looks like that there are many things that we are doing today. One is obviously is in terms of the kind of work we are doing, being at home, managing other multiple priorities, taking care of our home, our families, our kids, at the same time our work life. Some of us are also getting good time to spend on ourselves, which could be in terms of doing exercises or pursuing some of our hobbies, which like city like a Mumbai, where we spend a lot of time in traveling in those areas. And yes, I think spending time with our families. But having said that, I think one thing is very clear is yes, this is a challenging time. And when you talk about a challenge, as a human being, right? We say that there are two kind of responses that we may experience while we are facing challenges. And if we move to the next slide, we would surely understand that there was a conventional way of dealing with the challenges. And we also propose that there are new age responses that we may actually choose to deal in such challenging times. So at one place when we say that one of the natural responses is when we experience challenge is flight, is running away from the situation, which is a very non-confrontational way of dealing with the situation, where the new age response suggests that we face it. So flight against it is face, which is more in terms of being confrontational, and looking at and talking to yourself. Let's see, let me face it and let's see where it takes me to. The second response is there's a fright, there's a fear, and that maybe I give in and I experience numbness, whereas the new age response suggests that it's more of a Fathom response, which means I adopt more analytical approach towards the situation, deep dive into understanding the causes of the situation, and look at the ways of from where the challenge persists from and what may I really or what can I really do about it. Whereas the third is fight it out, the conventional response said, which was more in terms of being reactive and at times being rebellious in terms of I really want to give it back and do something around it. Whereas a new age response suggests that how do I really facilitate myself and others to deal with the situation in a more productive manner, and which can be done mostly through listening to self and others and being more communicative to others by understanding the challenges and helping each other to deal with it. Um, when we say talk about the three new age responses, what we say that what are the behaviors are then expected from us to deal with and serve through the COVID-19 current situation. And if we look at ourselves, there are three major areas that we all operate into, and which is professional, personal, and social. So when when I talk about the five behaviors, we at Naman felt that they all are expected to demonstrate in this time. Um, it is applicable to all three aspects of our life, which could be either professional, personal, or social. So first one is adhering to the norms and the practices is the first behavior I would say we all are expected to demonstrate today. So now that adherence could be to our, like sticking to our routine office timelines, or it could be sticking to the routine of at our home requirements, and sticking to some of the government rules and regulations which we are expected to adhere to. While we say that we are doing adherence and compliance, I think being professionals or being at home, we all are expected to deliver certain results. So how do we really take accountability to deliver results using newer ways or finding newer ways to deal with it? So when I say newer ways, it could be in terms of, let's say, as a sales professional, or maybe as a trainer, as a coach. Usually I would, let's say, visit to a client place, have a face-to-face discussion where I'm still expected to do that, but I look out for new ways, like what we're doing today, like using technological platforms to reach out to our customers, to my participants or people, to do coaching and maybe training or doing sales engagement. I think yes, third very critical normal behavior today we are expected to demonstrate is managing multiple priorities. And when I say multiple priorities, it's not only at workplace, maybe even when I'm being at home. It could be in terms of taking care of my older parents, like older parents or our elderly family members, taking care of their health, our own health, taking care of the kids who are currently at home. Usually there's an exam time where they're at home. How do we really engage them and create a balance for self and others so that we function more productively? While again we do that, what will be really important is how do I keep myself and others motivated? Because there's continuous messages going around saying that what you need to do, you all need to take care in this tough time. But how do I keep myself and others motivated to keep up with the situation is another requirement, and I think that's a behavior which we will need to demonstrate. And lastly is though I may be socially asked to practice social distancing, but how using and technology means stay connected with each other and move on and do various things which I'm expected to do. So having to demonstrate this behavior, I think what we are talking to you about is how do we leverage our personalities to demonstrate these behaviors. And if you now look at the next slide, I think what we will be talking about more in how 16PF, as the name suggests, personality factors can actually help me demonstrate the behavior. 16PF is one of the oldest psychometric tool, which gives me information on my personality traits and how these traits help me behave in different situations is what the tool gives me information on. And now when we look at the next slide, we may see that the tool, psychometric tool 16PF, it gives me information on the left-hand side of the screen. If you see those 16 factors, it gives me any individual would receive response on the 16 factors. And for each factor, if we look the table, there is a left and there is a right meaning. So each factor has a continuum attached to it. And the number really talks about that individual with given factors, how he or she is likely to demonstrate certain behaviors. And the tick marks besides each factors gives is what are those specific personality factors we will be focusing on to see how we can leverage or manage around these traits to demonstrate those 5 behaviors, which I just spoke to you about, and for which I would now like to invite Urvi to take us through how these personality traits may impact my behaviors and how can I leverage around it. Over to you, Urvi.
Thank you, Shruti. Thanks a lot. And welcome everyone for this webinar. Quite familiar names, and hence welcome to all of you. I'm sure that you're carrying your 16th report along with you as well, so that while we talk, you're able to refer back to it as well. So looking to the first factor, first behavior which we talked about, that is adherence to practices and norms. I think, as she also mentioned, very important at this point in time where we're required to demonstrate this, one, in context to hygiene, personal distancing, and also at the workplace where we have to ensure that while we still work from home, we comply to the systems and processes, and at the same time at home. So there are 4 factors that we identified that could contribute towards helping us demonstrate this behavior. Reasoning, wherein this particular factor, if you look at the right meaning and how it helps, is that it may help us in terms of identifying, analyzing, and going into depth of understanding why certain system, process, or practice is essential. And with that logic and reasoning, I put my building my conviction to be able to adhere to those norms that I expected to. Versus on to the left of reasoning would indicate that though I may adhere to, I may not reason out for myself in depth, and sometimes that may impact in terms of my inconsistency towards following that adherent behavior. Looking to, let's say, root consciousness, I'm skipping one and moving to the next one at this point, is where root consciousness, the right meaning, would help me to willingly follow and adhere to the norms set outside me. And I believe that those are helpful, and the impact would be that it would help me adhere to it most often than not. Versus towards the left are the individuals who may feel that at times a little discomfort with adherence because they may have their own ways of thinking and working, and that's where they may not necessarily break rules. However, their belief to comply might be less. Or if we see or what we have been hearing these days is that some people, though asked to not venture out, are caught by the policemen, and that's how they are being treated. They may fall into the left hand in that context. Perfectionism, if we look at that particular factor, the right meaning is an internal drive to follow and comply to things. And that's what will further help me to adhere to the practices set by others. And I also believe in that context. Versus the left are the people who believe or who feel that it's okay to go with the flow, and as and when needed, I would. Now that may lead towards sometimes inconsistency in adherence. And coming back to the second one, that is dominance. Mixed up all of these, while we ourselves may follow, we may have teams, we may have people at home, we may have kids at home, and we have to make them comply with all of it, and at times it becomes a very challenging task. And for that particular thing, the right me would come handy. That is where I put forth my expectations, I assert to the point, and in that context, influence people to be able to comply and adhere to those processes set by family or by government or by the organization. Wherein the left meaning are the people who follow and accommodate. So if they're being influenced well, they would comply, they would follow, and they would be in line with it. But if there's someone else who's influencing the other way, they may fall prey to that as well. So it may be good to watch out on our behavior, on our personality traits from this dimension, on this factor. Moving to the next one, if we go to the next slide and where we look at the other factor or other behavior which talks about accountability, results, and delivering in a newer way, I think very much needed at this time where the economy is is stumbling. At the same time, organizations demand that we have to perform for our own good and obviously for organizations' good. And there are certain things to be taken care of at home, very, very important that we focus on to this particular behavior, wherein there could be three factors which contribute towards it. If we see perfectionism again, this particular factor would help me or help us towards the right to be able to plan, to be able to organize myself towards the goals and the demands or the results that I'm expected to deliver. And in that context, that internal drive becomes useful, and that's what the impact could be versus the left. While there could be external things or there could be results demanded from outside, I may still go with my flow to deliver from that context. And that's where how it may at times impact, though it may facilitate to adjust to priorities or adjust to changing goals. However, sometimes it may be in a different line as well. Root consciousness, again, the benefit of it, if I'm towards the right, could be that it may help me to abide by the quality standards, abide by the deadlines, or abide by the deliverables that I am to discharge, be it for work or be it for personal life. And with that context of belief to follow norms and to adhere to things that are told to me, the right will become helpful as well. Versus on the left, one may not that again I would say break those norms, but they may still go with their flow of goals that they might have decided, or go pursue the goals that has been asked um, or internally felt, I would say so. And if we look at the openness to change, I think very, very important at this point in time, where we are to adapt and adjust and find new ways of doing things, be it in personal or professional life. The right meaning and people from that orientation would be open to explore, to experiment, try out new ways of doing things if something doesn't work. So, for example, we were, for this webinar, if I talk about, there were some glitches that we were facing, but we worked towards figuring out different ways and modalities to work out, because what was expected is to deliver this webinar. And that's where the right meaning, I'm sure, with all of us became handy. The left meaning from that context would be that I may still tend to adopt more of a tried and tested and known approach, and I would be very uncomfortable if a demand is given to me by an organization or so to kind of work on a newer way of doing things. So when technology is becoming a way to work on, right now we may face that, or those kind of people might face the challenge. So this is about how those factors can contribute towards results and finding newer ways to build on accountable delivery for results. Let's move to the next one, which is about multiple priorities and adjusting to it. I think needless to say that all of us right now working to achieve or get to meet multiple priorities, be it at home where the house help is not available, running around meeting all those household stuff, at the same time not to compromise with the work at working from home as well. the demands posed by children, or that while they're sitting at home, how do we still engage them, and older people. So multiple priorities, I would say, that each one of us facing. And from that context, there are three factors which we felt would be a helpful thing to have. Perfectionism in context that, again, it helps me drill down what I'm to accomplish during the day, and in that break those down into urgent and important, or schedule those things, and intrinsically look at the plan that I would be able to follow from that context. And the other side of it is in element of seeing to it that the left meaning would indicate that this person, while there are multiple priorities, might still have own priorities, or might go with the flow, and even if there is a to-do list, might either click on or skip out on some of these because they believe in going with the flow rather than a lot of structure. The other aspect would be reasoning, where the important thing or the right meaning people would again drill down or think through as to what are the priorities, what are the sales priorities, what are the needs of my customers, what are those requirements of the retailers, or what are the needs of people in the family. So be able to think through it to be able to prioritize further, versus the left meaning are the ones who would go what is being stated rather than themselves going to depth to analyze the requirements from that context. And rule consciousness, again, the right would help me adhere to the plan that would have been decided by me based on whatever are the demands onto me, versus the left meaning may still go with the flow and may have an impact of skipping out on some priorities for that day or for that week. So from that context, if we look at the next one, which is the element of motivating self and others, and looking at this next slide, I think very, very important and very, very crucial. While we have to achieve results, we have to meet multiple priorities. And if you look at the next slide, which says motivate self and others, this particular behavior is critical for each one of us to maintain the momentum that we are in, or the crisis that we are in, not just for ourselves, but for people around us as well, which could be our teams who are connected or who we are connected with virtually, or our children, or our family members, or people who are extended family or friends. And if we have to keep them engaged and motivated, very, very important out here. So the first factor, which is apprehension, the left meaning here are people, and the impact of left would be that it would help the individual to believe in oneself, to be positive, to be optimistic, and believes that, oh, I can sail through and I'll be able to manage. I think that's very, very critical, and brings in that hope for self and for others. And if you look at the right, are people who may sometimes get into self-doubt, may have that nervousness or anxiety, and would be worried in terms of how they might cope around onto it. And the next would be dominance. So with that confidence, or the level of confidence that I have, if I look at the right hand, someone who believes in taking in charge of the scenario, someone who's going to not only be self-motivated probably, but be able to impact and influence others. If I'm confident I can impact others with that positivity, I would say charge up my team with that positivity as well, and my children with that positivity. Wherein the left meaning are the individuals in terms of impact would be that they may kind of need a push. They may need to be impacted and influenced. And if they come across individuals who are positively oriented, would be surely a helpful thing to be around and good to stick around those kind of people. Versus if they're people who are complaining, who are whining, and in that context, they may get impacted with that. So I would recommend staying away from those kinds of people at this point in time. The next factor, which is liveliness, this particular factor, the right-meaning people bring in a lot of energy and enthusiasm and liveliness even in these current times. Just to quickly share with you an example would be one of our team members who on an everyday basis brings up some quick task and activity for all of us, and we engage ourselves into it. During the day, it helps us to recharge and then look forward, because at the end of the day, that person again brings it up. So I think it's a good way to engage, and I'm sure that he is towards the right on liveliness. And in that context, for all those of you who are towards it, it might be good to keep your team, with your children, keep your people around you engaged and cheerful and energetic from that context, with that hope that things will sail through. Versus the left meaning are, again, the impact would be that they're quite focused, they are self-driven. So though they may not need anyone's motivation, but when it comes to motivating others, they're more task focused than people focused. So they would be more on to task, and maybe some people can be driven through task as well if you may want to use that. But it might also be a good idea to look into some aspect of people as well and their needs. And that's what the next factor talks about, which is sensitivity. Towards the right, people, the impact of towards being right is that one is very sensitive, is able to kind of know, understand, and see the feelings and needs of others. That could be my team. So what is the need of the team? How engaged are? What's the morale of my team? Or how my children are? How engaged do they feel? How eager are they frustrated? And with that sensing is what, if I leverage on some of my other factors, I can be more involved with those people to be able to touch them, to be able to sensitize, sensitively deal with them and motivate them based on their needs. Versus on the left, though these people are good, obviously, they're more objectively oriented. So what does the situation demand, irrespective of people's needs, is how they would pursue. Sometimes it's fine, but right now during the crisis moment, I think people become the focus, and that's where we may want to, again, leverage on our traits, whichever area that you are at, to be able to motivate, keep yourselves motivated and others motivated. Let's look to the next one, and the next one talks about, I think most important again, is in terms of staying connected. Some of us who are who are a little introverted, for them maybe this social distancing is proving to be helpful. Versus there's some who are very much socially oriented or wish to be connected, and that's where we're facing some challenge. But I think, again, as leaders, or as heads of the organization, or even as head of the family, or even as a contributing family member, very, very critical that we look into the social needs of people around us. And though we are asked to maintain personal social distance or physical distance, but we are still good to connect electronically or be in proximity with people in this mode, the way we are talking about. So the two factors, if we look at, is sensitivity towards the right. Again, people who are very sensitive to self and others' needs, able to understand them, see what they're facing as challenge, and what are their needs, social needs, and that's based on that is how they're able to address the people around them, be it in person or in the same family, or even through connecting through various modes like Zoom or Skype, etc. And towards the left, people again adopt more of an objective approach. So one may not have a lot of need of their own, but if they're able to analyze how others feel, they can balance it out as well from that context. Looking to the last factor out here, which is self-reliance, and people with self-reliance towards the left are the people who like to glue with others, who like to hang out with others, who like to include themselves or others in what they are doing. And probably at this point in time, they may feel that how to do that, which could be their need or others' need. And I'm sure that with the way we connected and we have the opportunity these days, video call, etc., that's pretty much possible. And this is what can facilitate their need as well, and they can impact the teams or individuals around them. Versus onto the right are the people who are more self-sufficient, more independent, and they are okay doing things by themselves. And again, from that context, if they're sensitive to others' needs, it might be a good idea to remain connected, especially when you have a team to bind or align on different things, rather than wait for someone to approach you. So I think that's how these factors could be used to address some of the behaviors that is demanded onto us because of the current scenario. I would now request Shruti to take up the next couple of pointers so that it helps us kind of move further along.
So thank you, Urvi, for I think sharing great insight in terms of how my internal traits. When I talk about traits, I think I would have put sometimes my internal mechanism or my internal wiring, either motivating me or facilitating me to demonstrate certain behaviors, deal with different situations. So this slide is just kind of to give us a perspective around that. For all the 5 behaviors, if we look, it's not just that my one personality trait contributes to only one behavior. My one personality trait might be contributing to my different behavioral parameters, which each one of us may then want to kind of look into and reflect on. And that's why when we now move on to the next slide, you would realize that having known that how the current challenges, as you talked about it, there are 3 new age responses in terms of face, fathom, and facilitate. And to kind of actually develop those responses to deal with the COVID-19 situation, we then looked at how personality traits actually help me demonstrate certain behaviors. And to now actually get on to the next action, obviously will be in terms of, now that I have known, what do I need to do about it, or how do I really go about it? That I ensure that I demonstrate this behavior in the best possible manner. The first step would be is to reflect. Now that I know, and I think most of you are familiar with 16 PF or have your reports with you, I think I would suggest that today maybe take some time for yourself and reflect and look in terms of how some of my personality traits are having a facilitating impact on these behaviors, and how some of them might inhibit me or not really help me demonstrate the expected behaviors. So to quickly give you an example, let's say when we spoke about liveliness as one of the factors, and let's say in the context of motivating myself and my team members to be at our best by in this, I think, the situation, let's say somebody who is on towards the right hand of the side, it might actually facilitate me. But let's say if I'm towards on the left side of the scale, it at times may inhibit me, but does that mean that I would not be able to demonstrate this behavior? No. The next step will be, if I know that how my traits are creating the impact, the next step will be is to reveal it is to identify those specific traits and behaviors that I may want to focus on. So let's say, taking the same example, I may say that my score on perfectionism is towards the right, and I have a team member who's, let's say, a score on rule consciousness is towards the right. Then let's say, how can I really understand that how these traits are impacting the different behavioral parameters? I pick those specific traits and behaviors to focus on. That I may see that his, in the context of motivating the behavior, let's say the rule consciousness may at times be kind of pushy, but how can I really leverage on the liveliness parameter to keep myself and others motivated? And that's where the third R will come into picture, is respond. Is that I have done some specific action plan to pick and choose that, okay, if my score on perfectionism, where kind of pushes me to keep myself motivated to ensure that I adhere to the timeline, that's how it motivates me. But there's a team member who, let's say, is towards the right, and for him, let's say, keeping in connection with the person and talking to the person and understanding what he or she requires may actually help him stay motivated. Hence, I think the third step will be to respond, is identify your own traits, and if you know your team members, then how do you want to really leverage and manage around those traits to demonstrate these expected behaviors in the best possible manner, so that when it comes to, I think, surfing through the COVID-19 situation, how to really ensure that we face it with a very analytical approach that is fathom and facilitate self and others to serve to this time and be at our best, and look at it from more of an opportunity perspective to things that are other way than only looking at it from a challenging times. And hence, I think, just to kind of sum up, and before we take out of this, I think, question answered session, where you all can, on the right hand side there is a chat box where you would see where you can share your observations, your own experiences, and as well as if you have any specific questions you may want to ask, feel free to let us know if you want to know something more, or you want to share your experiences in this time. And then probably we have about 5 to 7 minutes of time in our hands. Any questions and answers, or anything that you want to share at this time?
Anyone has any questions?
Hey, Harshali, you have something? Please go ahead. Okay, thank you, Harshali.
Yeah, I think as Raghu shared, it's a good way to refresh your report sharing sessions that we had at different points in time, and I hope that, yeah, it helps you further to kind of plan certain actions based on it as well.
Yeah. I think this is just a kind of a light, I would say, an anecdote. When I was in school, my teacher used to say after any session, she would ask us, do you have any children, any questions, to the audience? And she as a facilitator, she would always tell us that number one is, if the audience says there's no question, it has got two meanings to it. One is that, okay, they have really understood the message which we wanted to sort of communicate, and sometimes it could also mean that they've actually put people to think about sometimes, for themselves. And I think with that, I agree with Mr. Poruha, that yes, the link will be available for you to take up the, I think, 16 PF assessment. You can contact the Sulagna or Shweta about it, and it will be available for you to take the assessment. Right? Um, yes. Uri, would you like to share about Tamil is asking which is the ideal self-reliance or group working
Yes,
story?
I would do that. So, in terms of ideal self-reliance, so it would surely depend from the context that you're looking at. But if it's more in terms of, let's say, connecting with people, right, and that's what we talked about. If I'm less oriented towards connecting with people, and the other person has a high need to connect with you, and that is where I would say there's no ideal, but being able to respond to that need would be more important rather than changing completely. I'm sure that in next about a month or so, you will not be able to change yourself the way you are. But yeah, at least being aware that, yeah, I am more independent oriented, but let's say Shruti has a need to collaborate and work along. So I may have to at least acknowledge that to be able to see how can I help if I'm not able to change. So I wouldn't say there's an ideal, but yeah, if you are towards the left on self-reliance, it would come naturally to you towards group working. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I think Raghu has sort of written a feedback. Thank you, Raghu. I think that surely, I think I would agree that brings a lot of confidence, and I think our experience says that 16 PF for that matter, I think some of the psychometric assessments, if we, it actually gives us a lot of opportunities to help us think through about our own selves and helps us manage around our situations well, where as an individual, I think it gives us a lot of perspective on how am I functioning, and it helps us being more sensitive to self and others. And it really helps us to facilitate and be at our best with each other. All right, I think if we were
yeah,
to,
there's one more question. I think
yes.
Uttam had a question as to I wish to keep
Yes.
my team alert during this hour, which behavior I need to exert. I think when you talk about alertness, as I understand what you mean is about accountability and results and delivery of results more so, right? Besides self-motivation. So from that context, I would strongly feel that it would be important, one, to impact and influence your team from the context of motivation in that ways, to align them, to motivate them so that they are up and ready to deliver. And from there is where you can then take them to especially the aspect of trying out new ways and means to work around on the things that they might be facing challenge. So I would suggest some of the behaviors or some of the factors that we talked about in terms of dominance, wherein you're able to impact and influence your team, would be something which I would say would be a helpful thing. Besides openness to change and promoting that in terms of trying new ways and means to be able to achieve those focus with delivery, I think that would be a helpful thing to do as I think so.
Nilal, yes. Urvi, you want to go?
Sorry?
Okay, I see one more question from Ms. Mrinal Roy in terms of how do we keep our children motivated? So maybe a quick response, because I have a 9-year-old kid, I think, at home, and I think yes, I understand that. I think yes, they are scared. I think one will be is to also identify what are those activities where we can also engage ourselves with them. Could be, I think, the first step. I think, as we discussed just now, is to look for the tools or some activities which they are interested in, and how can we partner with them in terms of carrying out those activities could be of help. That way it could be done. Second could be in terms of if there are any hobbies that they would like to pursue, kind of really help them to see what are the resources available at home and how can they use those, involving them in some household activities are there. And also, I think having an open dialogue with them, and I talked about the facilitate part, is also actually having open dialogue with them and help them understand what the situation is and what are the things they can do, and we at our place we can do to help us manage the situation. Like something like why you can't go out to play, So can we play in the home, and what are the activities you can do, and so on and so forth. This could be some of the ways and means where we can engage the kids as well. Yeah.
I just see a question by Mr. Ray, and I think in terms of how important is motivation when the focus is still on KRA, I think the question has the answer in itself. In the context that if unless I'm motivated in this scenario as well to deliver, even if I have all the facilities back at workplace, I may still not deliver. Also from the context as we are today on the 31st of March, and I'm sure that each one of us have some goals to which we should have accomplished, probably or we wish to achieve or accomplish in next one quarter. Unless we have to it, or as a leader, if I'm aligned, I have shown in the benefit of focusing on it at this point in time, probably I wouldn't see that people might be motivated enough to otherwise work on it. So I would see that it's an important factor. Motivation is an important factor, be it intrinsic or extrinsic. So if someone is not internally motivated, probably as a leader, it would be my job and responsibility to motivate them through the tools and means. So that would be my responsibility.
Okay. Yes. So yes, Raghu, I think we are conducting, and we will be conducting different sessions on different areas. And I think at the end of this webinar, also, I think our team would be sharing our coordinates with you people. Feel free to reach out to us in terms of if you need any support or some more information around it, and you will surely keep receiving some more invites around certain webinars or some sessions that surely you would like to attend. And if you're looking for something specific, do write back to us, and we will see how best we can deliver those to you all, right? So yes, I think for everyone, I think either with Sriram or other, I think you will keep receiving details about different programs from us. But as I said, if you're looking for something specific, do write back to us, and we will see how we can best take that into consideration, right? I think we may kind of now conclude and okay. So that question, right. Yes, go ahead. Okay, I think the question in the question column, I think this question.
Yeah, so Mandeep, your question as to your lower left side in sensitivity and high on openness to change, what does that mean? So you come across as someone who is quite objective in dealing with situations or with people, yet you are open to try out and experiment new things when it comes to being on the right side of openness to change. So you like to experiment, explore different ways of doing things, but you may still adopt an objective approach when dealing with situations or with people or with decisions in that context. So that's what it would mean.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question, Mandeep.
Yeah, I remember who's writing this way. Okay, great. All right. So it's, I think, 10 to 4. And maybe at this point, Urvi and I think would like to take opportunity before we kind of conclude is thank you to each one of you for being part of this webinar, and we sincerely believe and hope it helps you all and helps you to kind of think through how do we really help ourselves and others be at our best and leverage on our personality traits to demonstrate behaviors and serve through this COVID-19 time. And just to conclude the remark, I think we have just two messages is continue to motivate self and others to serve through this time by ensuring that you deliver the results with complete accountability, and at the same time while you manage your multiple priorities, uh, stay connected using all the technological and digital platforms that I think we all are getting opportunity to for, and look out for newer ways to serve through this time. But while we do all of this, I think very important part is stay safe, stay home, and take care of yourself and people around. And we shall overcome the situation soon.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sulagna and Naman. Yep, Naman team backend for this webinar.
Thank you.